When the envoy stepped onto the landing platform of the Galactic Assembly Station, the moment felt larger than life. People across Earth had waited for this day for decades. Humanity had finally earned a place among hundreds of species, each with their own history, strengths, and conflicts. The envoy had trained for years, not with weapons or battle tactics, but with patience, listening, and understanding. Their purpose was simple: represent Earth with dignity, speak for peace, and show the galaxy that humans were ready to be part of something much bigger. The station was enormous, almost like a floating city made of metal and light. Ships of all shapes and sizes arrived from distant stars, each carrying delegates wearing different colors, patterns, and symbols. Some moved with wings, some walked on several limbs, and some floated as if the air itself held them up. Yet all of them turned to watch the human envoy walk forward. For many, this was their first time seeing a human up close. Most had only watched broadcasts or read reports. Some thought humanity was ambitious. Others thought humanity was too emotional or unpredictable. But many were quietly hopeful, wondering what kind of presence Earth would bring to the assembly. The envoy walked calmly, although their heart beat a little faster with each step. They wore a simple dark uniform with Earth's emblem on the chest. Nothing flashy, nothing meant to intimidate. Humans had agreed that humility was the best way to introduce themselves. After all, they were the newcomers. A soft chime echoed through the enormous hall, signaling the start of the meeting. The envoy followed the escort to a central platform, shaped like a ring with hundreds of seats around it. The lights dimmed slightly, and a glowing symbol of unity appeared above the center. Representatives from friendly species nodded respectfully. Others watched with unreadable expressions. And then there were those from the Kesser Dominion, the group known for their harsh rule, strict hierarchy, and unyielding pride. Their eyes were fixed on the envoy, but not with curiosity. There was something colder there, something that didn't belong in a place meant for diplomacy. The envoy noticed, of course, but kept their posture steady. They had been warned that not everyone wanted Earth in the assembly. Some feared change. Others feared competition. But Earth believed that showing openness, not aggression, would eventually earn trust. When it was time for the envoy to speak, the lights shifted to a soft blue, signaling attention. The envoy stepped forward, their voice calm and steady as it echoed through the vast chamber. They spoke about Earth's journey, how humanity had learned from war, from mistakes, and from the painful parts of its own past. They talked about the value of cooperation, the belief that every species had something to teach and something to gain. They did not brag about human technology. They did not talk about military strength. Instead, they spoke about curiosity, hope, and the desire to learn. They mentioned how ordinary people back on Earth, teachers, workers, parents, and children looked at the stars not with fear, but with wonder. They wanted to be part of something bigger, not overpower it. Many listeners were moved. Several representatives exchanged approving looks. A few even let out soft sounds of agreement, a gesture of respect in their cultures. For a moment, the hall felt warmer, as if a new beginning was unfolding for the entire galaxy. But not everyone appreciated the message. Members of the Kesser Dominion whispered sharply among themselves. Their leader, tall and rigid, watched the envoy with narrowed eyes. The Dominion had ruled many border systems through intimidation. They were used to being feared, not challenged. The idea of humans joining the assembly did not fit their plans. A unified galaxy threatened their dominance. Still, the envoy continued, unaware of the storm quietly building among the Dominion seats. When the speech ended, the hall erupted, not in noise, but in emotion. Some applauded. Others remained thoughtful. A few looked uncomfortable, unsure how this new presence might change the balance of power. The envoy stepped back, relieved that the message had been delivered. Their mission was simple, yet meaningful. They had come as a messenger of peace, hoping that seeds planted today would grow into friendships tomorrow. But just as they began to take their seat, something shifted in the atmosphere. A sudden murmur spread through the room. The Dominion leader rose abruptly, speaking in a loud, sharp voice. The words came out in a formal tone, but the message was filled with hostility. They claimed that Earth's entry into the assembly threatened stability. They accused humans of hiding their true intentions, of pretending to be peaceful while expanding rapidly in space. They insisted that humans were too unpredictable and must be kept out permanently. The envoy stood slowly, taken aback by the sudden attack. They tried to respond calmly, explaining that Earth had no interest in dominance, that cooperation was their core intention. But the Dominion leader cut them off, raising their voice even higher. A wave of discomfort rippled through the hall. Representatives from several species looked alarmed. Others whispered urgently. This was not how assembly debates were supposed to happen. Disagreements were normally resolved through discussion, not attacks. The envoy felt their heart beating hard now, not from fear, but from disbelief. They had come to represent millions of people who hoped for peace, and instead they were being used as a target in a political display. Yet even then, they kept their voice steady, trying to escalate. But the Dominion had already made their decision long before the envoy arrived. With a sudden command, several Dominion guards moved toward the platform. Gasps filled the hall. This was against every rule. No one was allowed to use force inside the assembly chamber. The envoy lifted their hands slightly, not as a defense, but as a gesture of calm. For a moment, it looked like someone might intervene. A few representatives stood up, voices rising in protest. But the Dominion guards were swift. The envoy didn't resist. They believed the assembly would stop this. They believed rules still mattered. But the Dominion's grip over nearby systems had made many afraid to speak too loudly. Within moments, the act was done. The envoy was gone. The chamber fell silent in a way that felt heavy, almost suffocating. It wasn't loud, it wasn't graphic, but the meaning struck through every heart present. A line had been crossed that should never have been touched. Representatives stared in disbelief. Some trembled. Some covered their faces. A few shouted in outrage, but their voices felt small in the vast hall. The Dominion leader stood tall, as if expecting approval, but instead they found themselves surrounded by horror. This was not a political move. It was an act that shattered trust across the entire assembly. The hall emptied slowly. Some walked away in tears. Others stayed frozen in their seats. Nobody knew what would happen now. Nobody knew how Earth would react. But everyone knew one thing clearly. This moment would change everything. On a quiet observation deck facing the stars, an assistant who had accompanied the envoy stood alone, trying to breathe through the shock. They knew Earth would soon receive the footage. They knew people would see the envoy's calm face, their respectful posture, their peaceful words, and then see what followed. They imagined the reaction back home. The hurt, the disbelief, the anger, the unity. Humans were many things: imperfect, emotional, stubborn, but when wronged unfairly, they stood together in a way few species understood. Earth did not strike first, but it never ignored injustice. The assistant stared out at the galaxy beyond the station's glass wall. Lights from distant stars blinked back like silent witnesses. A message would soon travel across the darkness, carrying a truth no one could soften. Earth's envoy had come in peace, but the galaxy had answered with cruelty. And humanity. Humanity would answer back. Back on Earth, the day had started like any other. People went to work, children went to school, and screens across the planet showed live updates from the Galactic Assembly Station. There was excitement everywhere. News channels had been preparing for the envoy's speech for weeks. It was a historic moment, humanity stepping into a larger community beyond their own world. Families gathered in living rooms. Cafes set up screens for customers, and entire classrooms watched together. Many felt proud, others curious, and some a little nervous. But overall, Earth was hopeful. They wanted the envoy to succeed. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans were ready to grow, ready to learn, and ready to work with others. When the envoy began speaking, billions listened. The calm voice, the respectful tone, and the message about cooperation touched people deeply. Children pointed at the screen with bright eyes. Older people smiled, remembering times when humans had struggled even to reach their own moon. And now, here they were standing in front of hundreds of alien species. For a while, it felt like everything was going well, but soon the tone shifted. First, there was the strange tension coming from the Dominion seats. Then, the loud voice interrupting the envoy. And then the sudden movement of guards. People on Earth leaned closer to their screens, confused. Some asked their friends what was happening. Others replayed the part where the Dominion leader raised their voice. A few commentators on news channels tried to explain, but even they sounded unsure. Nobody expected what came next. When the moment happened, the footage froze for many stunned viewers. People blinked, unable to process it at first. Some thought it was an error in the broadcast. Others thought the feed had cut. It didn't make sense. The envoy had gone there in peace. They hadn't raised their voice, hadn't threatened anyone, hadn't shown any harm. Yet they were gone. The broadcast continued, but most viewers didn't even hear the next sounds. They were too shocked, too overwhelmed. A wave of silence spread across Earth homes, offices, schools, even busy streets suddenly went quiet. People stared at the screen, trying to understand how something so unthinkable could happen at a place meant for diplomacy and unity. On social media, millions of messages appeared within minutes. Some were confused, some angry, some heartbroken. Others simply wrote, "What happened?" Or "Why?" People posted clips of the envoy speaking about peace, and then the moment everything changed. It spread across every platform, every country, every language. In the large headquarters of United Earth Command, leaders watched the footage in a room filled with heavy air. Nobody spoke at first. Some officials covered their faces with their hands. Others whispered questions. A few stood with clenched fists, trying to keep their emotions in check. The envoy had represented all of humanity, every nation, every culture, every person. And now that representative had been taken in front of the entire galaxy. It was not just an insult. It was a betrayal of trust. One of the senior commanders finally broke the silence. They asked for the footage to be replayed, slowly, carefully, frame by frame. Everyone watched again, even though it hurt. They analyzed the expressions of the Dominion leaders, the reactions of other delegates, the hesitation in the hall. They wanted to understand whether this had been planned, whether anyone had tried to stop it, whether Earth had missed any warning signs. But the truth was simple and brutal. The envoy had walked in peace. And somebody had decided that peace didn't matter. On the civilian side of Earth, emotions kept rising. People lit candles outside government buildings. Others gathered in public squares, holding signs with messages of unity and mourning. Musicians played soft, sorrowful notes in memory of the envoy. Teachers paused their lessons and talked with students about what had happened, trying to help them understand without scaring them. Even people who usually disagreed about politics or world issues came together. There were no arguments that day, no debates, just a shared feeling of loss and disbelief. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe. And the galaxy had answered with violence towards someone who had no weapon, no threat, no hostility. As hours passed, leaders from friendly species attempted to send messages of regret and apology. Some diplomats from peaceful worlds spoke on galactic channels, saying they were shocked as well. They explained that the Dominion did not speak for the entire assembly, that not all species supported what had happened. But on Earth, trust had shattered. The footage kept playing on every screen, again and again. Some people cried watching it. Others sat still, unable to speak. And some felt a burning anger rise inside them, not the reckless kind, but the kind that came from injustice, from seeing something sacred violated. In the command center, the highest-ranking officials finally spoke with clarity. Their voices were steady, but their eyes carried deep emotions. They released a statement broadcast to the entire world. The message was short and calm, but filled with meaning. They said Earth had been attacked. They said the Envoy had gone in peace and had been harmed without reason. And they said Earth would not let this stand. They did not threaten war. They did not shout. They did not demand revenge. Instead, they spoke about dignity, justice, and responsibility. They explained that humanity had always valued dialogue, but would act when pushed beyond a certain line. The statement ended with a single promise: humanity will answer. As soon as the message aired, the entire planet responded with one unified heartbeat. People who had felt powerless now felt steady. People who had felt angry now felt focused. People who had felt broken now felt connected. It wasn't a cry for battle. It was a promise to protect human dignity, to show the galaxy that Earth was not weak, not frightened, and not alone. In orbit around Earth, fleets that had been in routine patrol mode received new orders. Ships powered up, lights glowing across their massive forms. Engineers worked without pause, checking systems, updating navigation routes, and preparing supplies. Pilots took their seats with calm determination. Officers moved across hangars with disciplined speed. Everyone understood that this was not just another mission. This was a message. Aboard the flagship, a quiet discussion played out among senior officers. They talked about the Envoy, not just their role, but who they were as a person. A peaceful soul, someone who believed that understanding could bridge almost anything. Someone who valued life, not conflict. And that memory made the mission even more important. It was not fueled by hatred. It was driven by respect. There was no cheering, no loud talk, only steady preparation. The fleet known as the Aegis Line, Earth's most advanced defensive and diplomatic force, moved into formation. They were not designed to conquer. They were designed to defend, to protect, to respond when no other option remained. And now, the galaxy would see what humanity meant when it spoke about resolve. Before departure, a quiet ceremony took place. A small light was placed in the center of the flagship, a symbol of the Envoy's mission. Officers stood around it for a moment of silence. No speeches were made. Everyone knew why they were there. When the fleet lifted off, millions watched from Earth's surface. Some waved from rooftops, even though the ships were too far to see clearly. Others whispered good wishes. Children held drawings of the Envoy, flowers, or Earth's emblem. The sky lit up with streaks of light as the fleet left orbit, heading toward the stars with silent strength. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Assembly Station, many species were still in shock. Some delegates stayed awake all night, worried about what Earth would do. They knew humans were emotional, yes, but they also knew something else. Humans were deeply loyal. When someone hurt one of their own, the response was never casual. It came from the heart, and it carried weight. Whispers filled the hallways. Some said Earth would demand justice. Others feared conflict. A few hoped humans would forgive. But most knew the truth. Humanity did not seek unnecessary harm, but they would not ignore cruelty. The Dominion leaders, however, acted as if they still held control. They believed Earth would be too afraid to respond. They believed humans were still inexperienced in galactic matters. They believed their display had proven dominance, but they were wrong, got far beyond their understanding. Humanity had already changed. They were no longer the same species who had watched their envoy step into the assembly with hopeful eyes. Now they were something stronger, more united, more aware of their place in the universe. Earth wasn't coming with chaos. Earth was coming with purpose, and every star between them and the Dominion would soon understand that humanity's silence was never emptiness. It was the calm before a movement that could not be stopped. The journey of Earth's fleet through space was not loud or dramatic. It was steady, controlled, and focused. The ships moved like a single living system, each one knowing its place and purpose. Inside the flagship, the atmosphere was calm, but filled with determination. The officers spoke softly, giving orders without raising their voices, and the crew members worked with sharp attention. No one wanted anger to guide their actions. They wanted clarity. The fleet's path took them through regions of space that most humans had never seen before. Giant glowing clouds of dust spread like paint across the darkness. Strange energy waves shimmered in the distance. At times, the ships passed by worlds that had never been visited by humans. Some were peaceful and quiet, with blue oceans or pink deserts. Others looked dangerous, with storms that flashed like lightning across the surface. But the fleet did not stop to explore. Their destination was already set. Inside one of the ships, a young technician sat at her station, hands moving steadily across the controls. She had watched the envoy speak live. She remembered the warm feeling in her chest when the envoy talked about peace, cooperation, and Earth's hope for friendship. She had felt proud of being human. But when she saw what happened next, she had felt something break inside her. She had left for this mission because she wanted justice, not revenge. She wanted the galaxy to see that humans cared about dignity. Across the room from her, an older officer quietly monitored long-range scanners. He had seen conflicts before. He had seen misunderstandings turn into battles. But this time felt different. This time, Earth wasn't stepping into a fight because of territory or power. This time, they were responding because someone innocent had been harmed without reason in a place meant for trust. He kept telling himself to stay calm, to lead with a steady mind. But deep down, even he felt something shift. When the fleet reached the borders of Dominion space, the screens lit up with warning signs. The Dominion had installed heavy defense platforms across the border, each one capable of destroying ships that dared to cross. These platforms turned slowly, scanning for intruders. They were not expecting company from Earth. The officers on the flagship gathered around a central display showing the positions of the platforms. It looked like a wall of glowing red dots, hundreds of them. The Dominion clearly believed they were untouchable. They had built a barrier strong enough to make most species turn away. But Earth was not here to attack without purpose. They were here because they demanded respect for life. A communication officer announced that the Dominion had detected their approach. Within seconds, a message appeared on the screen. The Dominion commander's voice sounded cold and confident. They accused Earth of entering restricted space and warned the fleet to turn back immediately. The flagship's captain did not raise their voice. They simply stated that Earth was passing through as a response to an illegal act committed at the assembly. They asked for the responsible Dominion leaders to be handed over peacefully. They asked for cooperation, not conflict. The Dominion did not take it well. Their voice grew sharper, almost mocking. They declared that the envoy had been a threat, even though the footage had shown nothing of the sort. They insisted that Earth had no right to question their actions. They threatened retaliation. Inside the flagship, many crew members clenched their fists but said nothing. The captain remained calm and sent one final message. Earth wished to avoid unnecessary harm. If the Dominion opened fire, Earth would defend itself. The silence that followed was thick, and the first blast came. A bright beam shot from one of the Dominion defense platforms, heading straight toward the fleet. The flagship's shields lit up like a glowing bubble, absorbing the impact but trembling from the force. Alarms echoed across the ship, and that was it. The fleet no longer had a choice. The captain gave a single order, short and clear. The crew reacted instantly, activating defensive systems while keeping weapons focused only on immediate threats. Earth's ships moved in perfect coordination, forming defensive lines that protected one another. They didn't fire wildly. They didn't target anything beyond what attacked them. But when they did respond, their precision left observers speechless. Earth had spent years improving its technology quietly, focusing on accuracy instead of destruction. Every shot from the fleet hit the exact point it aimed for, disabling weapon systems without damaging life support structures. One by one, the Dominion platforms went dark. Their power systems shut down with clean efficiency within minutes. The border wall the Dominion had built with arrogance had fallen silent. The entire galaxy watched in disbelief. Many species had expected humans to panic or lash out wildly. But instead, humanity showed something far stronger discipline. Not just in battle tactics, but in moral choices. Nearby neutral stations began broadcasting reports. Commentators spoke in hesitant voices, almost unsure how to describe what they were seeing. One reporter said that humans fought like they were thinking about every life on both sides. Another said the precision was almost unsettling in its restraint. And yet another said that the Dominion might have underestimated the heart of Earth. Inside one of the destroyed platforms, Dominion workers stared at the damage. Everything was shut down, but nothing essential had been harmed. They had expected explosions, fire, chaos. Instead, the humans had removed only the weapons, leaving the platform untouched. Some workers, who had never agreed with their leaders' decisions, felt a strange respect for humans they had never met. Back in the fleet, the crew took a moment to recalibrate. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not give up so easily. The fleet moved deeper into Dominion space, and every step forward carried weight. The Dominion sent out threatening broadcasts, claiming that Earth's actions were an act of war. They promised retaliation. They called humans reckless. But their bravado sounded thinner with each message. Meanwhile, other species began sending secret transmissions to Earth's fleet. Some shared maps. Others shared information about Dominion ship movements. A few sent quiet messages of support, saying they believed Earth was doing the right thing. They had seen the Envoy's peaceful intentions. They had seen the Dominion's aggression. And now they were seeing humanity's measured response. In one of the smaller ships, a communications technician wiped her eyes quietly after reading a message from a species known for their gentle nature. The message said, "We are grateful someone finally stands against cruelty." It reminded her why she had joined this mission. As the fleet approached the first major Dominion outpost, tension rose again. The outpost was large, with dozens of ships docked around it. It was designed to intimidate anyone who passed through the region. But after seeing their border defenses fall so easily, many Dominion officers were already uneasy. The fleet sent another communication, giving them a chance to surrender without conflict. They reminded the Dominion that Earth was seeking justice, not conquest. There was no reply. Instead, a group of Dominion ships powered up their engines and shields. They were preparing for battle. Their commanders believed they still held enough force to push humanity back. But what happened next showed the galaxy something they had never seen before. Earth's fleet moved as if guided by a single heartbeat. Their formations shifted smoothly, adapting to every change in the enemy's position. Their ships glided through space with such precision that even experienced alien commanders found themselves watching the broadcasts in awe. When the Dominion fired, Earth responded with perfect timing, disabling ship after ship without causing harm to the crews. Some Dominion pilots, shocked by the lack of lethal damage, surrendered mid-battle. Others tried to retreat. A few officers on the outpost attempted to call their superiors, only to learn that the higher leadership was already blaming each other for the disaster. Inside the outpost, several younger Dominion workers whispered that maybe the humans were not the threat they had been taught to fear. Maybe their leaders were wrong. When the battle ended, the outpost remained standing, but completely disarmed. The only damage was to weapons and power systems, nothing that endangered innocent workers. Earth had sent a message without saying a word. Back on the flagship, the captain stood quietly at the observation window, staring out at the stars. They knew more challenges awaited. The fleet still had a long way to go before reaching the Dominion capital. There would be more battles, more resistance, more attempts to paint Earth as the aggressor. But the captain also knew something else. Humanity had shown the galaxy who they truly were. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but protectors who believed in justice. Even in the face of danger, the Envoy's memory guided every decision, every step, and as the fleet continued deeper into Dominion territory, the galaxy finally began to realize that humanity had been underestimated, not because of their weapons, not because of their ships, but because of their heart. The day after, the long and emotional evening at the piano, she woke up earlier than usual. Her room was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every small sound seem louder, the ticking clock, the soft rustle of the curtains, even her own breathing. She sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, letting the memories of last night drift back slowly. It still didn't feel real. She had walked into that room, expecting nothing more than a short moment of embarrassment, something she would later laugh about alone. But what happened instead felt like a turning point her heart had been waiting for without knowing. She stretched her hands and stared at her fingers. They didn't look like much, just ordinary hands, small, thin, carrying the marks of someone who worked hard every day. Cleaning floors, washing dishes, carrying trays, folding laundry. But last night, those same hands had filled a room with music so deep that even the billionaire had tears in his eyes. She didn't play for applause. She played because the piano felt like a friend she had lost long ago and suddenly found again. She got ready for the day, tied her hair back neatly, and put on her uniform. When she stepped into the hallway, she felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. Normally, no one looked at her twice. She blended into the house like part of the furniture. But today was different. People stopped whispering when she walked by. Some looked embarrassed, some curious, and a few even smiled softly, as if they were seeing her for the first time. She kept her eyes down and went straight to her tasks. She didn't want attention. She didn't even know how to react to it. She just wanted to work like she always did, quietly, carefully, without causing trouble. As she entered the main dining room to help prepare the table for the morning meal, she noticed one of the other workers standing awkwardly near the door. He stepped forward, then stopped, then stepped forward again, unsure of what to say. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Hey," he said softly. "About yesterday, you were amazing." She felt a small rush of heat rise to her cheeks. Compliments always made her shy, even small ones. She smiled politely. "Thank you," she said, keeping her voice low. He nodded, but didn't move away. No, I mean, really, I didn't know you could do something like that. He rubbed the back of his neck. None of us knew. It's not something I talk about, she replied, gently placing a stack of plates on the table. I used to play a long time ago. Well, I hope you play again, he said, before quickly stepping out of the room, almost as if he was embarrassed by his own words. She went back to work, but his words stayed with her. She hoped to play again, too. But hope was a strange thing, beautiful, but heavy. Every time she allowed herself to hope for something, reality reminded her that her life didn't have space for dreams anymore. She wasn't here to play music. She was here to work, survive, and send money back home. But still, something inside her had awakened. Later that morning, she was wiping the railings in the main hallway when the butler approached her. He was an older man, always serious, always perfectly dressed, carrying an air of quiet authority. His tone was polite but formal. "You are requested in the music room," he said. She froze mid-wipe. "Requested? By who?" "The owner of the estate," he replied. "He wants to speak with you." Her heart began to beat faster. She wasn't sure if she was terrified or curious or both. She nodded and followed him quietly through the long hallways. Every step felt heavier than the last when she entered the music room. The billionaire was standing near the same grand piano she had played the night before. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, making the polished surface of the instrument shine like something unreal. He turned when he heard her enter. His expression was calm, not the amused, dismissive look he had worn the night before. Today he looked thoughtful, even gentle. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside and folded her hands in front of her. "You wanted to see me, sir?" "Yes," he said. "I did?" He paused for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "I want to apologize." She blinked. She hadn't expected that. "Not at all. I asked you to play last night as a joke," he continued. "I assumed you had no skill, and I thought it would amuse the guests. It was wrong of me." He exhaled slowly. "But when you started playing, I realized how foolish I was." She didn't know what to say. Apologies were rare in her world, especially from people like him. She stood still, trying to understand the moment. "You have a real gift," he said softly. "And gifts like that shouldn't be hidden." She shook her head. "I'm just a worker here, sir." He raised an eyebrow. "And talent only belongs to people with wealth? That's not how life works. You've proven that." She lowered her gaze. "I haven't played in years. I didn't think it mattered anymore." "It matters," he said firmly. "Not just to others, to you." For a few seconds, silence filled the room. She stared at the piano, the smooth keys, the shape she knew so well, the instrument that felt like a doorway to a version of herself she had lost. She spoke cautiously, afraid of her own voice. "I stopped playing because life became too hard. I had responsibilities. I had to choose survival." The billionaire nodded slowly, as if he understood more than he wanted to show. "I'd like to offer you something," he said. She looked up, unsure where he was going with this. "I want you to play again," he continued, properly. "Not as entertainment for guests, but as something meaningful, something for yourself." Her breath caught slightly. She waited for the catch. There was always a catch. "You can use this room whenever you like," he said. "Even outside working hours. I'll make sure no one disturbs you." She blinked again, unsure if she had misheard. "You want me to practice here?" "Yes," he said simply. "But why?" she asked. She wasn't being rude. She genuinely didn't understand. He thought for a moment. "Because talent is rare. Passion is rare. And because last night, the way you played, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Something human." He paused. In a world full of noise, your music felt honest. I think you should keep it alive. She felt her throat tighten in a way she didn't expect. It wasn't common for someone in his position to speak like that, and even rarer for someone in her position to hear it. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, he replied. Just promise me one thing, don't let your gift die again. He stood up, nodded politely, and left the room, leaving her alone with the quiet sunlight and the waiting piano. For a long moment, she didn't move. Her eyes followed the patterns of the dust, floating gently in the warm light. She walked slowly toward the piano, her steps careful, almost reverent. When she sat down, she ran her fingers lightly over the keys. They were cool and smooth, almost soft in a way only musicians understood. She pressed a single note. It echoed through the empty room. Then another, and another. Soon her hands moved without thinking, without planning. The music flowed again, soft, fragile, but alive. It felt like opening a window after years of breathing stale air. Her chest warmed, her eyes stung slightly, but she didn't stop. For the first time in years, she wasn't playing for survival, or duty, or fear. She was playing for herself. She didn't know where this new path would lead. She didn't know what the billionaire truly intended, or what the others in the house would say. She didn't know if she would ever return to the stage, or if this was simply a brief moment of light in a life full of shadows. But one thing was clear. The music inside her had woken up again, and this time, she wasn't ready to let it go. The next few days passed in a way she had never experienced before. Her routine stayed the same: dusting shelves, wiping windows, carrying baskets of fresh laundry, helping set the tables, but something inside her had changed. A quiet excitement followed her everywhere, like a small flame glowing in her chest. She didn't show it on her face, but she felt it. She felt it in her steps, in her breath, in the way her fingers brushed the edges of things as if they were keys on a piano. Every night, after finishing her tasks, she went straight to the music room. The staff noticed she stayed behind longer than usual, but no one questioned it. The billionaire had given strict instructions that she was not to be disturbed when she was in the music room. The news spread quickly, and suddenly the same people who once ignored her moved aside politely when she walked past. She didn't know how to react to that either. She never asked for respect. She only wanted a quiet life. But now people saw her differently, and she hoped they didn't expect anything from her. The first night she practiced, her hands were stiff. She felt nervous even though the room was empty. She kept glancing at the door as if someone would suddenly walk in and laugh, but no one came. She played for a short time, then stopped. The second night, she played longer. The third night, she lost track of time completely. The notes came easier, the music flowed smoother, and she could feel pieces of her old self returning, like she had been slowly rebuilding something broken. One evening, as she finished dusting the shelves in the hallway, she overheard two workers talking near the corner. She didn't mean to listen. Their voices just drifted toward her. "Did you hear she's practicing again?" one whispered. "Yeah." "The boss must have seen something in her," the other replied. "I was there that night. She really was amazing." "She's lucky," the second person said. "Most people like us don't get chances like that." She paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. Lucky. Was she lucky? Maybe. Or maybe life was finally giving her back something it had once taken away too early. Still, she didn't want to become someone people whispered about. She just wanted the music. Later that day, while she was finishing her chores, the housekeeper approached her. The housekeeper was known for being strict but fair. She ran the household like a machine, organized, steady, and unmoving. "You are needed in the main hall," the housekeeper said. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No," the housekeeper replied. "But you should come." She followed quietly, unsure what to expect. When they reached the main hall, she saw the billionaire standing near the staircase, holding a set of papers. He looked at her with a calm, serious expression. "I want to speak with you," he said. The housekeeper stepped aside and left them alone. She stood still, her hands folded in front of her, waiting. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about your music, about your talent, and about what it could become." She felt her heart tighten. She didn't know if she was ready for this conversation. "You have a rare ability," he continued, "not just to play well, but to make people feel something." She shook her head. "I'm not a professional. I haven't played in years." "That doesn't change what I heard that night," he replied. "It doesn't change what I see now." She didn't say anything. She didn't trust herself to speak. He held out the papers. "I want to help you learn again. Properly, with guidance." She hesitated, looking at the papers in his hands. "What do you mean?" "A music instructor," he said. "A very good one. Someone who can train you, help you rebuild your foundation, and guide you if you ever decide to take music seriously again." Her breath caught. She took a small step back. I don't think I can do something like that," she said softly. "I'm not ready." "No one is ready for their own destiny," he said. "But that doesn't mean they should run from it." She lowered her gaze. "It's not just fear. I have responsibilities. I can't spend my time learning music when I'm supposed to work here." "You will keep your job," he said. "This is something extra, something you can do in your free hours." "But why?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" He took a moment to answer. "Because I saw something I haven't seen in years. Pure passion, pure honesty. It reminded me of why people create, why people dream. And if I can help someone protect something that true, then I should." His words felt too heavy, too meaningful. She didn't know how to hold them. "I don't want to be treated differently," she said quietly. "I don't want people thinking I'm getting special treatment." "You won't," he said. "This is between us. A gift, not a spotlight." She hesitated again and looked up. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I fail?" He gave a gentle smile. "Everyone fails, but the brave ones try anyway." There was something in his tone steady, reassuring, not demanding. She took a slow breath and nodded. "I'll try," she said. "That's all I ask," he replied. He handed her the papers. They weren't formal documents, just schedules and a brief introduction to the instructor he had arranged. She didn't know how to feel: grateful, overwhelmed, nervous, surprised. Maybe all at once. That night, she returned to the music room again. This time she didn't rush. She stood by the window first, letting the moonlight fall across the floor. The room looked peaceful, almost magical in the soft glow. She sat down at the piano and rested her fingers on the keys, but she didn't play right away. She needed a moment to absorb everything that was happening. Life had never given her gifts before. Life had mostly taken from her opportunities, dreams, people she loved, time she could never get back. And now, suddenly, she was being offered something she had once believed was gone forever. She pressed a key softly. The note echoed gently, dot then another. And another dot. The music started slow, like a whisper. Then it grew warmer, fuller, as her hands remembered the pieces she thought she had lost. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wrap around her like a comforting blanket. Halfway through her practice, she heard a quiet sound. She opened her eyes and turned. Someone was standing near the doorway. It was one of the younger workers, the same one who had complimented her days earlier. He looked nervous, almost guilty. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I was passing by, and I heard you playing." "It's okay," she said gently. "You can come in if you want." He stepped inside slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "You're getting better," he said. "You already sound different." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just less scared." He nodded. "I'm glad you're doing this again." "Thank you," she replied. He stayed only a minute, then left quietly. She watched him go, and then turned back to the piano. Something about his words made her realize how much she had changed in such a short time. She wasn't just playing music again. She was reconnecting with people, slowly allowing herself to be seen. After finishing her practice, she walked back to her room through the dim hallways. The house was quiet, and the air felt cool. She held the papers from the billionaire tightly in her hand. They felt like a promise she wasn't sure she deserved. When she reached her room, she sat on her bed and looked at the papers again. There was a small description written by the instructor. He seemed experienced, patient, and passionate about teaching. She wondered how he would react when he discovered she hadn't played seriously in years. She wondered if he would think she was wasting his time. But then she remembered the billionaire's words. Everyone fails. The brave ones try anyway. She placed the papers on the table, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes. The next day came quickly. Morning sunlight filled the room, warming her face. She got ready for work as usual. Nothing about the house had changed, but everything inside her felt different. There was a new purpose in her hands, a new strength in her steps. The world hadn't transformed overnight. She was still a worker in a large house. She still had responsibilities, tasks, rules to follow. But now she also had something more, something she thought she had lost forever. That hope got quiet, steady. Growing hope, and she wasn't ready to let it go this time. The morning of her first official lesson didn't feel like a normal morning. She woke up earlier than usual, long before anyone else in the house was moving. For a few minutes, she simply sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. They looked the same as always, thin, quiet, a little tired, but she knew something had changed. These hands were going to play again. These hands were going to rebuild something she once thought she had lost forever. She dressed quickly, tied her hair back, and stepped into the hallway. The air felt cooler than usual, almost crisp, as if the house itself sensed the importance of the day. She walked to the kitchen to help set up breakfast for the staff. She tried to stay focused on her tasks, but her mind was somewhere else. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the music room, to the piano waiting for her, and to the instructor she would meet soon. Even while she arranged plates, poured water into glasses, and folded napkins, she felt something new inside her, like courage, but softer. A quiet strength. After finishing her morning chores, she went to the music room exactly at the time written on the schedule. She expected to see the instructor already inside, but the room was empty. She checked the clock again. Maybe she was early. She walked to the piano and touched the keys lightly, pressing a soft note. The sound comforted her the way a warm hand comforts a cold one. A moment later, she heard footsteps. The door opened quietly, and a man in his late 50s entered. He wasn't tall, and he didn't look strict. His face had a calm, patient expression, the kind you see in someone who has spent years learning how to listen. He carried a small leather bag and a notebook. "You must be her," he said gently. She nodded. "Yes, I've heard a lot about you," he said. Not from the billionaire, not from the staff, but from the piano. She blinked in surprise. "From the piano?" He smiled. "Instruments tell stories, you know. I played it yesterday to check its condition. I felt something in the keys. A little hesitation, a little hope, and a lot of heart." She didn't know what to say, so she simply lowered her eyes and whispered, "I hope I can learn again." "You will," he said confidently. "If you are willing to trust the process, you will." They sat together, and the lesson began not with scales or complex techniques, but with soft, simple exercises. He didn't push her. He didn't correct her harshly. He simply guided her gently, adjusting her posture, showing her how to relax her hands, teaching her how to breathe while playing dot at first. She stumbled. Her fingers slipped. Some notes came late, some too early. But the instructor didn't seem disappointed. In fact, every small mistake made him smile softly, as if he believed mistakes were stepping stones, not failures. Don't rush, he said. Let the music come to you. And slowly it did. The first lesson lasted an hour, but it felt like only minutes. When it ended, she expected the instructor to leave immediately. Instead, he closed his notebook and said, "You're better than you think. You have something very rare." "What?" she asked quietly. "Emotion," he said. "Most people try to impress. You try to speak. Music responds to people like you." She felt warmth spread through her chest, but she didn't let it show too much. "Thank you," she said softly. The instructor left, and she stayed behind for a few minutes, absorbing the moment. Then she returned to her daily work, moving through the hallways with a new kind of lightness in her steps. Throughout the rest of the week, the lessons continued. Every day she learned something new. Some days were easy, filled with smooth notes and small victories. Other days were challenging, with mistakes that frustrated her and techniques she struggled to master. But she never gave up, and the instructor never lost patience. More importantly, she noticed something else happening, not in the music room, but in herself. She began to walk taller. Her voice grew clearer. She smiled more easily. The staff noticed it too. People who once barely acknowledged her now greeted her warmly. Some even asked how her lessons were going. She tried not to let the attention overwhelm her, but she couldn't deny how good it felt to be seen, truly seen. One evening, after a long day of work and practice, she stepped outside for fresh air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. She stood quietly, breathing in the cool evening breeze. She hadn't felt this peaceful in years. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw the billionaire approaching. He wasn't dressed formally today, just simple clothing, relaxed and comfortable. That alone surprised her. He rarely appeared casual. "You're improving," he said. She looked down shyly. "How do you know?" "I listen," he replied. "Sometimes from the hallway, sometimes from the garden. Your music travels." She didn't know he did that. The thought made her heart flutter in a way she wasn't used to. "I'm trying my best," she said softly. "I can see that," he replied. "You've changed." She frowned slightly. "Is that a good thing?" "Of course," he said. "You're not hiding anymore. You're growing." She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to people noticing her growth. The billionaire looked at the sky for a moment, then said, "I want to ask you something." She turned toward him. "What is it?" "In a few weeks, we will be hosting an important dinner here. Very important people will attend. Usually there is a small musical performance at the end. This year, I want you to play." Her breath stopped. She stared at him, unable to speak. Her heart pounded in her chest so loudly she thought he could hear it. I can't," she whispered. "I'm not ready. I've only just started learning again. I make mistakes. My hands still shake sometimes." "That's normal," he said calmly. "And I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be brave." She shook her head. "They will judge me. They will see someone who doesn't belong there. They will see someone who has climbed out of darkness," he said. "Someone who dared to rise." His words felt too heavy again, too meaningful. She stepped back a little. "I'm scared," she said honestly. "What if I disappoint everyone?" "You won't," he said. "And even if you think you do, even if one note is wrong, or two, or 10, No one can take away your courage. That's what people will remember. Her eyes stung slightly, though she didn't cry. Let me think about it, she finally said. Take your time, he replied. But I hope you'll say yes. He walked away, leaving her alone in the fading sunlight. She stood there for a long time, thinking, breathing, trying to quiet her racing thoughts. That night she practiced harder than she ever had. But this time, she didn't practice because she felt pressured. She practiced because she wanted to know who she could become. She wanted to see how far her courage could take her. When she finished, she sat quietly in the music room. The moonlight entered through the tall window, falling across the piano keys like silver paint. She looked at her reflection on the glossy surface of the piano. She didn't see the same person she had been months ago. She saw someone stronger, someone braver, someone who had rebuilt herself piece by piece. After a long silence, she whispered to her reflection, "Maybe I can do it." The next morning, she found the billionaire in the main hall, organizing documents. She took a deep breath and walked toward him. "I'll play," she said softly. He looked up, surprised but proud. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes, I want to try." He smiled, and it wasn't the polite smile of a powerful man. It was a warm smile, full of genuine respect. From that moment on, everything changed. Her lessons became more focused. Her practice sessions grew longer. The staff supported her quietly in small ways, bringing her water, finishing some of her tasks early so she had more time, offering encouraging words. The instructor prepared a simple, beautiful piece for her to perform. Not something too grand, something honest, something that matched her heart. The day of the dinner arrived sooner than she expected. The house filled with guests dressed in elegant clothes, speaking in quiet, important tones. She stayed in the music room, trying to calm her nerves. When the time finally came, the billionaire himself walked in. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. She swallowed hard. I think so." He offered his hand, not as a boss, not as someone powerful, but as a human being who believed in her. She placed her hand in his. Together they walked into the hall filled with people. The piano waited for her in the room. Center. Her hands trembled. Heart raced. But when she sat down and touched the keys, something inside her settled. The music rose softly, then grew warmer, filling the room like a living thing. People fell silent. They watched her not with judgment, but with wonder. And for the first time in years, she wasn't scared. She was free. When the final note faded, the room remained still for a heartbeat, and applause filled the hall long loud. Sincere. She looked up and saw the billionaire, watching her with quiet pride. She saw the staff standing in the back, smiling, some even wiping their eyes. She saw strangers who had never known her, now looking at her as if she had just given them something precious. In that moment, she understood something deeply. Music had brought her back to herself, and she would never lose it again.